perspectives from the impact founders themselves. So we have a panel of distinguished founders with us today. We have Aditeshwar Seth from Gramvani. We have Jairam Srinivasan from Frontal Rain, Dr. Ashwin Naik from Vatsalya, Amrut from Guruji, and finally Suresh Krishnan from Gramin Kuta. And Adam, who is also one of our EIRs and who came all the way to India just to become an EIR with GSF and explore this opportunity, will be co-moderating this panel.
Thanks, Bhavna. So rather than us giving sort of extended introductions to all the panelists and their companies, we thought we would start off by allowing them to introduce themselves, introduce their company. And so what I'd like to do is maybe take a minute or so, explain not only who you are and what your company is, but also begin to tease a little bit how what your company does fits into sort of your vision of where your sector stands today. And maybe what we'll get into afterwards is sort of how that has evolved, how your sense of where the sector stands and where it's going has evolved through your time building these companies. But can we start with Jairam? Thanks.
So my name is Jairam, and I am from a company called Frontal Rain Technologies. So we are a business software company for food and agri.
We were all benefited, and today we are a large industry which we have grown in huge sizes in the last 10-15 years. But now today we find that we are in a crossroads. So we are not good enough for full-fledged PE investors who are purely commercial, because in this impact space, you can't really operate as 100% commercial entities. So a lot of stakeholders don't like us to be commercial. They want us to be social. If we continue to be social, the main PE guys do not see value in us. So that's the crossroads I think we are as of now in.
I guess we've been fortunate in that sense, because two of our investors were past clients, so they have seen us our work, so the kind of freedom that we enjoy is just exceptional. And second, we also ended up signing up a lot of projects in the initial period. Like I was telling, our first 5 customers themselves are huge, so the revenue pressure is kind of off, so the freedom to experiment and spend more focus on impact itself is a lot more. So in that sense, maybe we lucked out on that.
So we have 4 institutional investors. 2 of them are, they call themselves impact investors, and 2 of them are all out and out commercial investors. So my experience over the last 8 years has been, I can summarize this in a Peter Tosh song, which goes like this: everybody wants to go to heaven, nobody wants to die. So that's the status of impact investing. Right? We all talk about impact, scale, but I think that's very, very, very limited. And it's almost the same as early stage investing. We keep talking about early stage investing. It requires so much. We are there in the beginning, but talk to the guys who are raising money. It's very, very difficult. So I think this entire, while the intent is there, I think there's much to be done on the ground.
So in our case, we're very new. We just 3 months back we raised our first round of equity investment. Gramvani was initially started with a seed grant, so no equity investment in that sense. And the grant, of course, also gives you freedom to experiment, because I mean that was also the nature of the particular grant that we raised. I think it's really a learning process for both as we go along, because especially I mean in our stage where we're very early stage. So we've defined milestones which are a mix of both social impact as well as revenue driven. And both our investors are actually impact investors, I mean, in that particular broad category. But I think it's going to be a learning phase for all of us, because the model is new, so we don't know whether going forward to what extent will we need further grants to scale up, or it needs to be a mix of grants for some part of the work, revenue driven for some other part of the work, or at what point do we become interesting enough once in terms of connecting with different government departments for that matter. Because ultimately, if it's a public good that is being created, then much of the prerogative lies on the institutions themselves to support these kind of ventures.
So yeah, I mean, as of now, I think, and it's good that it's going to be a learning process, because if we freeze the particular metrics, then I think, I mean, we're making a mistake, because we haven't learned enough. So we don't know as of now, and we should know that we don't know.
So in the case of Frontal Rain, it's just funded by a agri-tech fund. So that way I think the fund also has focus on food and agri-business. I, to an extent, sometimes feel a little bit scared if people talk of social business asset. The reason is because if we are giving something free, it should not become like a subsidy, where the sector is highly, say, subsidy driven, where people just give money and then every year they just write off. And this, to an extent, kind of build laziness and then build, I think, that's the reason why we have huge inefficiency in our food and agribusiness sector. I feel that companies, if they are just, say driven to commercial ends as such, they will be a lot more sustainable in the longer run. I think increasingly small and medium businesses are realizing this. If they have to grow really fast, they have to just be self-driven and they have to just generate their own, I would just say, revenues and then keep growing. So they can get some support from the financial institution, but nevertheless, on a longer run, they have to just increase the efficiencies and be on their own. So that way I feel, say, for us as a fund, which is just not a social fund, but for us we can meet both the end, because this sector is highly underserved from a technology perspective, and we see a huge opportunity there.
Thanks. So I want to sort of take the question Bhavna just asked and sort of merge it with what you just said about the opportunity at the end. So within the sort of broad impact investing community, there's a lot of discussion about, for lack of a better term, the mismatch between the expectations of investors and the enterprises, and whether that's sort of the borderline existential crisis about where are the exits in impact investment, or whether it's prioritizing financial return versus social return. But there's all these huge estimates about the volume of institutional capital that wants to be deployed for impact, and then people are wondering where the deal flow is. So there's a room that's not entirely full of investors, but this is in many cases an investor conference, and you guys are representing founders. What would be sort of your call to action for investors that are interested in deploying capital in agribusiness or in education or in healthcare to help kind of get through some of these hurdles of mismatched expectations?
So my guess is, I think, say, funding in agribusiness of food processing companies is something similar to other, I would say, investment assets. They have to set the same benchmark in terms of the returns. Then only it will be interesting for them in the longer run. On the other side, they have to just be a little bit aware about the broken markets and the traditional structures, I think, are not really, I would just say, the rules are not applicable in this kind of, I would just say, sectors as such. And they need to be aware about this and then try to just come up with much more, I would just say, realistic plans, rather than, say, set up a kind of an expectation which is so. We need much more, I would just say, a longer, I would just say, landing cone as such there. But nevertheless, people should work towards creating value and give a, I would say, good exit for the investors as such.
So I would say that investors do bring a lot other than just money. Because, I mean, what's most important at this stage is really mentorship and new networks which can be opened up. So, I mean, in some of the earlier panels, there was talk about incubator units to train entrepreneurs, or much larger scale incubator units to help build scalability models for existing businesses. So those kind of things are actually what's very, very valuable, other than, you know, just the investors just bringing in money and then letting it go. So that's, I mean, in some sense, what my call to action sort of would be, that the investor community, especially in India, the impact investing space, they, I mean, I was very glad to know that there's this whole impact investing circle which is being created. So these guys should be able to muscle enough to potentially influence government departments for easier inclusion of social enterprises into their work. Or, you know, even in other cases, even in other large enterprises who want to reach rural areas and stuff. So So these networks are really critical, and that's what's required, I think, to help the whole. I mean, the companies were trying to connect the dots and do it in a meaningful way. So these connections are very valuable.
I guess a couple of points. One is I think there is too much focus on scale in the investment circle, which is right, but I think given the evolution of where the social enterprises and also evolution of the entrepreneurs ourselves, we are not at the stage where, and I think it's also unjustified to expect, deep-rooted social problems will be, sorted out in the 5-year business plan, right? So that's unrealistic. So I think toning down the expectations, making sure that this is going into the field, understanding that this is going to take much longer than we are focusing on right now. That is one. Second one, to his point, is I think focusing on creating or developing the ecosystem, which is not yet happening. Everybody wants a viable, working, proven business model. That's not going to happen by magic. So I think a lot more effort has to go in investing in mentoring, creating the ecosystem, focused on developing entrepreneurs who are focusing on this sector.
Couple of things I wanted to say have already been mentioned, so I'll skip that. I think the other key aspect was there's two things which come to my mind when we say impact, and that's how we internally define it. One is the scale of impact. Second is the quality of impact. Quite often investors are focused only on the scale of impact. Even if you achieve the scale, if the quality of impact is not substantial, it's hard for others to make sense or make use of what you're doing. So therefore exit becomes hard. And the other challenge with that is even outside investors, there is very little pressure even from the ecosystem often for the entrepreneur to actually focus on quality of impact. So it has to come from the team within to make sure that your top priority is quality of impact and not just scale. And that might be another key area where the investors could help with their expertise and past investments and what went well, what did not go well.
Yeah, I'll also add 2 points to that. One is, I think we should look at, if we want real impact, I think, yes, we need technology and we need money, everything is fine. But first of all, we need institutions to be out there. Because like Ashwin said, you can't we can't see a major impact in just short period of 3 years, 5 years time frame. You can't really build it up like that. So we need to build institutions which are going to be out there and keep continuing to serve. So that's how we can see a real impact going to be happening. So this is one point. Probably impact investors or people working in this space need to think about how do we build those institutions which will actually give a long-term or a sustainable impact. This is one point. Second one point which I just thought is if we look at only profitable enterprises, yes, profitable enterprises operate only in those areas where there is profits to be made. If we want real impact, so we need, the enterprise model or a profit model will not be able to go and reach out to those unreached or unreached areas. Like, for example, if you look at, we have very good private sector banks who are making a lot of profits, but it's the public sector banks which are out there in the remote corners and serving those remote people. Like we have all private airlines, we need Air India to survive because that is the only airline which goes to all nooks and corners of the country. Yes, it is bleeding, it's not making money, it is inefficient, whatever we can call it, but still you need them. So I think that kind of somewhere we need to look at how do we build institutions which continue to support, because such kind of institutions will help in longer run, I think, give a uniform impact across the country. This is.
Okay, we're almost out of time and we have to wrap up. I'm going to ask Dr. Naik to leave us his parting words for this panel, since not only are you very well aware of what's happening in healthcare, you're also at the front lines of what's happening in the industry overall with your work with the National Association of Social Enterprises. So paint a picture for us. If it's 2014, what's your dream for this impact space?
Did you say partying line or party line? Because I heard there was a good party yesterday, which I missed. I think the future is future is very, very bright. I think for the impact sector, I think the very fact that we are sitting in a technology-oriented conference and talking about impact, that itself is a great positive development. I think there is going to be a lot more activity, both from the entrepreneur side, from the investor side. But my parting thoughts would be, let's be realistic, right? I don't think we will be able to solve every problem that India has because we have a nice presentation. That's not going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a great session. Thanks, Adam and Bhavna.